Hello, everybody, and welcome to ADP Chasing. It is July 4th weekend, and Underdog has blessed us with a new tournament format that we will be breaking down in addition to the normal risers and fallers on ADP Chasing. Let's go.
Pat Fryer Helmo.
This is why I'm hot.
Anita Handjob.
Fix your sight.
Jamar. Alpha play chase.
Are you kidding me? Kadarius Toney?
You can't handle the heat.
Pete, it looks like we're finally piss boys. You're right.
Oh. Hey, everybody. Happy July 4th weekend. We're here today with Davis and Pete. I guess Pat's too rich to join us on July 4th weekend, so we got Pete here instead. Man of the people. Pete, how are you doing? Welcome back to ADP Chasing.
Yeah, thank you. No, yeah, I mean, it's kind of all of us normal Americans have to work on July 3rd. It's not all of us just getting the entire week off. Who knows which, major cosmopolitan city Pat is around the globe. It could be Stockholm. It could be Milan. Who knows? But the rest of us are ready to roll up our sleeves and help the people win this new contest.
That's the goal. I mean, Pat's definitely eating a pastry on a beach somewhere. He doesn't have time to get his hands dirty with the rest of us. He's not even worried about weekly winners. He's like, well, what, I'm going to win $20,000 per week. That doesn't move the needle for old Mr. Corain.
No. What is the entry size is like $15 to Pat doesn't even recognize denominations below like 1,000. So he's not even thinking about it.
The only thing is he did poke holes in that logic by Max entering the puppy with slow draft. So he's like a weird combination of millionaire and just truly broken brain syndrome there.
He was just doing it to test the rankings. Let's be honest. He's just really trying to deliver value for legendary upside subscribers.
Yeah. So I'm curious, Davis and I were talking before the show, Pete, but we are going to be new to this weekly winners. This will be our first draft for both of us. How have you been diving into that at all?
Yes, I have my toes dipped in. This is, I'll just put all my transparent cards on the table. I did my first fast draft last night, and I've entered about 10 slow drafts. And I will be honest, I've been thinking about the contest though all weekend. It's like snuck its way into my brain as a very fun puzzle, kind of like when we first started getting these Best Ball Mania tournament structures and really trying to think through this. And the weekly winners one, I think, is so interesting. There's already so many ideas and stuff out there and so many justifiable ways, I think, to attack it. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. And it seems like just the chatter I'm seeing that everyone is really enjoying this new format.
I do. I saw a couple things. The first is I didn't draft a Best Ball Mania team at all for 8 days, which is like the longest that I've gone. I did 2 this morning. I'm going to be doing 2 every day this week to get caught up. The other thing though is the weekly winners issue is really sort of that classic. This is like a DFS thing that people have had to deal with for a long time, which is, do you care about grinding smaller amounts of expected value, but higher levels of realization of that value? Or do you place all your efforts and all your thoughts on the very high expected value, but the very low realization value of the $1 million tournaments? And where I've landed is I prefer the higher expected value, lower realization. But, obviously that's going to differ a lot based on your goals and what you're trying to do in gambling for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think with the weekly winners too, I think I'm going to come around to it more, but I think I always have this reaction to new tournaments where I'm just like, you get so comfortable with Best Ball Mania and what you're used to and like what you think. At least I have no idea if what I'm doing is actually optimal in regular best ball, but at least I like think it is and I have confidence in it so I can fire a draft. I know what my strategy is going to be. And then when there are these new tournaments that come out, there's this like initial reaction of like, I don't want to like have to learn something new, but it always like
totally
it comes around over time. I think it's really interesting. Like the playoff best ball, I think I originally kind of felt that way about it. And then I just got completely addicted to that format. So I think I'm going to come around to this weekly winners thing once I start doing a couple of drafts. But man, the amount of different strategies that I've seen out there and the different ways to play it. I think, why don't we do this? Let's quickly hit on the risers and fallers this week aren't that plentiful, to be honest.
This is
on
the
that
dead
first.
times. This
Yeah.
is the real dead times. Like nothing's happening. No one's getting signed. Like we don't have Hopkins signed. We don't have Cook signed. We don't have training camp injuries. Like
Yeah.
we got nothing. We got every 4 days someone from the Broncos organization iterates that Tim Patrick is the second coming of Jesus Christ. He's Jerry Rice and Randy Moss and one guy, and that's really about it.
Yeah. So let's like hit on a couple of these guys quickly, and then I want to pivot to the weekly winners strategy talk. But let's talk the two guys I want to talk here. A lot of this movement is like just very small movement in the early running back ADP. I think this is maybe like a Tyreek Hill effect of some kind, where like McCaffrey and Eckler are getting a tiny bump.
I think it's a little bit Tyreek. I think it's also a little bit people. I think it's a Breece Hall thing too, where people are less comfortable having him as the anchor RB, and then you just smash wide receiver rounds 2, 3, 4, and 5. I think those are the corresponding things.
Yeah, the thing I've noticed with these, like, so a lot of times the way we do these charts, the change in ADP, we do it based on a percentage basis. That's how these players are ordered. So that's why McCaffrey is number 1 here, even though he moved less than a spot in ADP. I've noticed these things like are weird week to week, where McCaffrey will jump 0.7 spots one week and then drop 0.7 spots the next week. And like, I think sometimes there's just almost like no rhyme or reason to it. Like maybe it's when a puppy is available, people like wide receivers more and they take McCaffrey later when a puppy's not available. I don't know. There's just like random shit going on. Anyways, let's talk like some news-based stuff that's happening. I want to start with the Tim Patrick thing, which you alluded to, Davis. He is being hyped up by Denver beat reporters. I think they're, some beat reporter, I forget who, said, inside the organization, they think he's the best wide receiver the Broncos have or something like that. I think with Patrick, the thing is he has paid a lot of money. He had an early season ACL tear last year, so the health should be good enough for him to start the year. And he has a history of being a decent, okay producer, sort of 700 yards per year, 6 touchdowns type guy. So I do get sort of the rise in ADP. What I'm interested in, Pete, is do you think this means there's some risk in Cortland Sutton or Jerry Jeudy's ADP? If Tim Patrick's around taking snaps, they drafted Marvin Mims in the second round. Sutton and Jeudy are pretty high premium picks still. Are you fearful at all for those guys with these other pieces around in Denver?
I mean, I've been pretty spooked on Sutton recently, and I took my foot off the gas because I was kind of shrugging my shoulder in drafting him in that range, after kind of that wide receiver cliff happens.
That range is so bad.
It really is. And I think there's probably multiple factors contributing to the Tim Patrick. One, he's just a player that the community tends to like. He's been good. He, last year he got screamed up draft boards before he got injured and stuff. So I think there's just in general positive sentiment. And then I think people like the Broncos as like a bounce back this year. And then people say, hey, I might get a cheap double stack with Tim Patrick, or maybe I binked the trade. Sutton gets traded, and all of a sudden I'm getting 6 rounds of closing line value when Tim Patrick moves up to like round 13 if Sutton gets traded. Although that trade might not happen until in season most likely.
I think that's a zero. I think that's a zero-sum game. I think Sutton or Patrick produces one winner. I think it's impossible for it to produce 2. Basically, I don't think there'll be enough yards, enough touchdowns, enough red zone possessions. Like either Sutton is just so dust that Patrick basically unseats him, or Sutton just plays and Tim Patrick is the guy he's always been, which is like a rotational 3rd or 4th wide receiver. And also I kind of think Dulcich and Patrick is a zero-sum game too. Although the barriers of production at tight end are lower. I just in my mind, the Denver re-breakout, the Denver, the team we thought we were getting last year shows up this year. It's not 4,500 passing yards, 33 passing touchdowns. It's just they turn into a competent NFL offense with the way Sean Payton is going to call it.
But I'd push back on the Dulcich one thing, because Dulcich can be on the field with those guys, whereas one of Tim Patrick or Cortland Sutton is not going to be on the field in 3 wide receiver sets with Jeudy and Mims, most likely.
Yeah, not by the end of the year. I mean, you need a Jeudy injury, I think, is the only way you get that, right? Sutton for me is I think I had the same thought as you, Pete, when I looked at drafts, a couple months ago or whatever, however long it's been ago since we started doing this. I was like, oh, Sutton looks like the end of the wide receivers, and he's an okay pick in that range. Now I'm like full fading Sutton because one, I don't know, like he did have a good start to his career, but it's been a couple years now after that ACL tear where he has just not returned to the same guy he was. And you could blame quarterback play if you want. It obviously hasn't been great with Russ there, with Drew Lock there, Teddy Bridgewater there. It hasn't been great, but man, I think some of the early season efficiency and athleticism he had might just be gone, even though he's still like relatively young. I just think he never really fully recovered from that ACL tear. And yeah, you add in the playing time concerns with him. I just think it's like, if we're saying there's a wide receiver dead zone this year, I think he kind of epitomizes it in a lot of ways, where I'd much rather take a stab on Bateman or Zay Flowers. I feel a lot better about the talent there. Both those guys, I think, have a much better chance of being their team's wide receiver one than Cortland Sutton does. I'd much rather take a couple running backs in that range.
Well, yeah, you get on the clock. You get on the clock in the 9th round. You have 2 or 3 wide receivers, and your choices are Tim Patrick, Michael Thomas, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Alan Lazard. It's just like it is. There's no worse position to be in. It's so horrific. I mean, that's why I have so much Anthony Richardson. Is I just get to that spot in drafts, and I'm like, you know what? I like Rashee Rice or Sky Moore or whoever, Rondale Moore, the same as I like these guys. So I might as well just get a quarterback who can runs a little bit here.
I'm surprised Anthony Richardson isn't on this chart. Just anecdotally for my drafts, I've been getting my Anthony Richardson exposure now.
He's
Easy,
falling.
and I just got him at pick 118. I wouldn't be surprised to see him on this chart next week.
Yeah. It's interesting on the fall because he's been like very steadily falling, but it's never been like a big fall. So he's never popped on the charts. But yeah, if we did something like, versus a month ago, he would certainly show up as one of the bigger fallers. He got up to like pick 84, and that was like the peak of like the Anthony Richardson hype cycle. I think like Spags was saying you got to take him in like the 5th round or something crazy. And then he's just steadily fallen since then, which is interesting. I'm with you, Davis. Like I have so much Daniel Jones because of that reason. I have so much Anthony Richardson because of that reason. I get to pick like 100, and I like the running backs in that range, but like, yeah, I'm with you. I'd rather take a stab on like Nico Collins, like cost adjusted, like Nico Collins, Jacoby Myers are just so much better bets than like Cortland Sutton and Juju that I'm pausing on wide receiver here. Even if I need one, honestly, like I'm just pressing pause.
I just make them 8 wide receiver teams instead. At that point, I'm like, I'll just try and make up for this via numbers.
Yeah.
I feel like those ADPs that you just described, like after Zay Flowers and Bateman go, and when you get into that purgatory of Sutton and Michael Thomas and them, I feel like that ADP is almost driven exclusively by people who feel like they get behind at wide receiver. They're like, because like when Pat and I took Michael Thomas last Monday, it was literally like, we're getting fucking buried and we literally need a body here. I think that no one's ever excited to, but they're just like, structurally, I got to fucking take a guy right here.
Well, and that I think we've seen that after like wide receiver, let's call it 45, after Quentin Johnson, Flowers, and Bateman go, the wide receiver ADP is so due for insane corrections. Like guys who get steam are really going to get steamed. We're going to see guys. We already saw this with the Arizona situation. Hollywood Brown is up to a 5th round pick. Rondale Moore is like wide receiver 60. Dortch and Michael Wilson were being undrafted. They're drafted almost every single time now. And
come on, Dortch is not getting drafted every single time.
In drafts that Davis is in.
In drafts that I'm in,
You're drafting him every time.
He's going at a 100% clip.
Never seen Dortch go.
This is an underdog.
You're not drafting at 7 enough with Davis yet, Pete. He's getting drafted a lot then.
So this is we mostly do underdog on this show. We should do a DK show, but I would say Greg Dortch is the single greatest pick on DraftKings right now. You can get him in the 20th round. He is a lock for multiple 15-point DraftKings games, and you can just take him. But the point I was making is any sort of, if we get an Allen Robinson is in the best shape of his life, they're playing him in the slot, yada yada, he's going way up. Devante Parker, we've already seen. I mean, nothing we didn't already know. Parker was not getting cut or traded on the contract that he was on. Parker's up 10 spots just based off signing a contract. But we're going to see crazy 50, 60 spot jumps from wide receivers. Remember when Marquez Callaway was an 8th round pick and then just was Marquez Callaway and did nothing? We're going to see, my guess is like 5 guys like that this offseason where They went from being a total afterthought to being drafted 100 spots too high.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point too, because of, again, like the wide receiver dynamics
The
and
thirst.
teams that want to, like, you're going to be quicker to talk yourself into some of these wide receiver risers if you're like, hey, I'm scooping up these 3 running back values and like 3, 4, 5, and like,
Yep.
I need to catch up. All of a sudden and we've already seen it a little bit. Is Romeo Dobbs or Sky Moore on the chart? Because anecdotally, I feel like those guys have been
No,
moving up the
but
switch,
that's
too.
That's been another
your third eye,
steady drip.
Steady
your
drip.
third eye is too
Yeah.
open. It's coming. Like once the Packers declare a winner between Dobbs and Reed, whichever one of that guy is, he goes up 30 spots. When Andy Reid is saying Sky Moore is our guy week 1 or whatever, he's going up 20 spots. Or Rice could go up 40 spots,
Yeah.
pretty easily.
So the 2 guys in that range, the 2 guys I like the best and I think have potential for huge jumps up are Nico Collins and Jonathan Mingo. And it's a pretty straightforward thesis. It's just that they're the wide receiver 1s on their teams. And I think a lot of research, I recommend people check out JJ Zacharyson, late round quarterback. He has done some studies that show once you get into these like late rounds, like ADP, I forget exactly how he defines it, but I'm sure ADP 130 and later, I think, is sort of in the range he's talking about. Oftentimes these like wide receiver 1s on supposed bad teams are oftentimes better bets than, taking Justin Fields wide receiver 2 or taking, Rondale Moore, who's not going to be the wide receiver 1 in Arizona, etc. So I think those are 2 guys. Like, what if we get camp reports? I know Mingo's prospect profile is not spotless, but he was the 35th pick in the draft. If we get camp reports that hey,
Crane is on this.
Dust.
He's the new age Kelvin Benjamin.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, those are 2 guys I like taking stabs on, but I think that you can make an argument for a lot of those guys where I do think this range, I honestly don't see a big difference. Once you get to Sutton, pick 90 to pick 130 in ADP, I think there's going to be some massive reshuffling in that range over the next couple
I agree
weeks.
Completely. And I think you can apply that to basically anyone that we vaguely like. I take a decent amount of Alec Pierce, especially now that I've been doing some more Anthony Richardson. If Anthony Richardson is balling at training camp and people are getting confidence in him as a passer, you're going to see Alec Pierce's ADP get pushed up to the point where I wouldn't be surprised to see them correlated as a 9-10 double tap. You take Anthony Richardson, you take Alec Pierce.
I agree.
Stuff like that is going to happen a ton.
Yeah, 100%. Let's keep this on track. Let's move to Devante Parker. That was the piece of news that the Patriots inexplicably extended Devante Parker. Look, we don't need to talk about how dumb of a move this was for the Patriots. I think everyone agrees on that. They guaranteed this guy $14 million. He's 30 years old. He hasn't really been good in a while, but I will make the case for him in this ADP range why I think he's a solid pick. I do think this is news in the sense that Parker's contract was actually cuttable. They could have cut him with 0 dead cap before this extension. The details aren't fully out now, but I imagine this extension locks him on the roster for this year for a decent chunk of money. To me, that's just a signal that they're planning to play Parker in 2 wide receiver sets. He's not a slot wide receiver. He's an outside X wide receiver. You don't just pay a guy this if you're not going to play him. It doesn't mean he's good. I don't think he's that good, but last year he played in just 10 or 11 games, I think. 13 games. And he had 2 weeks. He had 1 week, 6 for 79 and 2 touchdowns in week 18 against the Bills. That was actually a game where the Patriots were trying to win. It wasn't garbage time. And then week 2, 5 for 156 against the Ravens. So he did have 2 big weeks last year. He's completely free. I think he's going to play. It's kind of like a Zay Jonesy-esque bet from last year. We're
that's exactly what it is.
Yeah,
that's a great point.
That's my stance on it, and I'm pretty bearish on Tyquan Thornton now. I think his paths to getting a big route share and participation share are a bit lower because I kind of was baking in the chance of Parker just being outright cut from the Patriots. Now I think it's a little bit thinner in how with Juju there, with Gesicki there, running routes as a wide receiver with Parker there, Kendrick Bourne still on the roster. Tyquan Thornton's really bad rookie year might have just been a signal that they're not really planning on having a role for him. He was a guy I was bullish on early, so it kind of hurts my bags to say that, but that's kind of how I'm approaching New England.
I guess I never thought that they were going to cut Parker. I get that they could have like money wise, but based on like how little, basically they replaced Juju or Jacoby with Juju and then basically made no other addition. So I kind of always worked under the assumption like, hey, we're going to need Parker just like as a body out here. So to me, it's like, if you liked Parker before, like continue drafting him as an 18th round pick. He's free. I just don't think anything has changed since that contract thing. It was like, I think he's in like the exact same spot. Like, I think it's a little weird if like thinking like he's going to have a better season because he got that contract. And I know that's not what people are saying. It's saying like, hey, he doesn't have the cut risk or whatever. I just don't think a lot has changed for him. You either liked him or you didn't, and he's still free.
Yeah. I think for me, it's like, yeah, he's just a high ADOT. At this point in his career, he's just like a high ADOT deep threat guy, 500 yards last year. That's obviously not impressive, but once you get to the 18th round, man, I'm taking,
the way
yards
these
is
guys
base projection, like I'm okay with that.
The way he accrues the 500 yards, though, is he might have a bunch of games with 18 yards, but he also might have 3 games where he has 111 yards. And this is a pro Mac Jones program for the most part. Like just the idea that there'll be a more competent offense with an actual offensive coordinator seems truer than not. And the market, it's what Ramondre goes in the 3rd round and then no Patriot goes into like the 15th round until Taekwon goes. It's
Juju,
like,
but yeah.
Yeah, Juju.
He doesn't exist. This guy remembers Greg Dortch, but doesn't remember Juju.
Look, Greg Dortch is going to score more fantasy points than Juju this year, probably.
Juju, man, get some bets down.
Juju is still dealing with a knee injury that he suffered in week 9 of last season. He still is not back to full speed. Like that it does not strike me as a guy who's ready to pay off a wide receiver 50 price tag. Like I would rather Parker at cost, not even close.
Yeah.
And that's actually low key. That would be a way that Thornton's price could be reasonable and Parker's could be, is if Juju just like physically cannot play this year.
Here, let me position it this way, because this I think is the more interesting thing about these players, because I really do think with like correlation, you can justify about any 18th round pick. Like if someone wants to take Allen Robinson on a Kenny, like whatever.
I take Allen Robinson sometimes.
But this was my question with Devante Parker. Would you ever take him ... in a vacuum? So with no
Naked.
Mac Jones, with no Buffalo bring back, like just purely as like, this is the guy I need for this team. That's where I don't see it, but I don't see that for basically any 18th round pick.
Yeah, I actually like making uncorrelated 18th round picks, because to me, it feels like the way that 17th and 18th round picks pay off is just they end up playing far more than anticipated, whether it be breakout performance, injury, whatever.
That's on the advance rate thing, right? That like in that scenario, but that's not, I think where they really pay off is in the correlated fashion in the 3 weeks sprint.
Sure.
Yeah. I would say, I think I would take him like uncorrelated. I would say like I would be checking a lot of other things before I took an uncorrelated Devante Parker in the 18th. Like I'd be checking, do I need a tight end here? And can I correlate, Trey McBride with Kyler Murray? Or do I need did I take Josh Allen and can I take Deontay Hardy instead? Like it's not my first choice, but sometimes you do get to the 18th round, you need a wide receiver, and I don't want to take like a speculative like wide receiver 5, on like I don't want to take Devin Duvernay over Devante Parker or something like that. And maybe I'm wrong for that, and some people would go that direction, but I feel pretty good about the locked in playing time for him. And it's not a sexy pick, but like the Zay Jones thing I really think it is kind of similar to the Zay Jones thing last year where, and I don't expect him to have as good a year of Zay Jones, but it's just like, look at the wide receivers in Parker's range, and there's no one who projects for a role like he does. Like it's, McCole Hardman, Jalen Hyatt, Hunter Renfrow. We just talked about Tim Patrick, right? But he still has an outside chance, I think, to be his team's wide receiver too, whereas Parker, I think, has the inside chance. So
The only thing I'd say is I think the Zay Jones example is an example for why correlation is so important, because hitting on Zay Jones was part of hitting on the Jags as an undervalued offense. Evan Ingram ended up being undervalued. Trevor Lawrence did. So that's why I'm just saying, like, let's say an example, I have a Giants or a Rams stack going, and I'm deciding between an uncorrelated Devante Parker or Tutu Atwell. Like, I'm taking Tutu Atwell, the correlated bet in that thing. And if you're doing, I had to toss you a short boy peace offering there. But so to the Parker point, like, I would actually want to have Parker as part of like a Mac Jones, Gesicki, Hunter Henry thing, being like, this offense on the whole is undervalued, and Parker is going to be part of the big winner as the market undervaluing this team.
Yeah, that's fair. That's definitely the best time to take him. Let's move. Yeah, let's move on to the fallers. We hit on it, Jalen Hyatt a second ago. He has fallen a ton. I also did want to highlight Tyreek Hill. I think there's maybe a tiny bit of suspension fears with him, but he's really not fallen more than.
I take Cup over him now.
Yeah,
just because of the tail risk.
I'm in the same boat. We'll wait for more news on that. We talked about it last week, but yeah, he's fallen. I think it's justifiable to take Cup and McCaffrey over him. But let's start with these like Giants wide receivers. I feel like it's become a recurring bit on this show where we have to talk about Giants wide receivers.
Do we need 17 minutes of if Isaiah Hodgins will or will not make the roster like we did 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, let's talk about Jameson Crowder versus Sterling Shepard camp battle for wide receiver 6.
So to me, this actually makes a ton of sense. This is because there was never any reason for 5 Giants wide receivers to be drafted every single time, you know?
Yeah.
And the market is now deciding the winners are Hodgins and Campbell, which means that Hyatt and Wan'Dale necessarily have to, you know, be just for the market to reach an equilibrium. Those guys have to essentially be undrafted.
Yeah.
I love this development because like Hyatt at this price and Wan'Dale
these are the ones I want.
Are my 2 favorite. And now you're getting them this cheap. I agree. I'm pretty excited about, because I wasn't drafting a lot of Hyatt, but I'm going to start scooping him up at these prices.
Yeah, I really like
taking him naked or just with Giants and Rams.
It would probably almost exclusively be Giants and Rams. But again, like I said, I'm almost like 100% only correlating my last 3 to 4 round picks.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. I would take Hyatt naked sometimes. He's certainly not even in like my top 10 favorite, you know, wide receivers to take with my last pick or whatever, but I could see it. Downs, I would never take naked, but I think Downs is a great, probably my favorite, you know, last round pick to correlate.
I'm starting to think you have a player type that you like, Davis. 5'6", 140 pounds, soaking wet. Just give him all
Downs is skinny, but he's not that short. Downs is super skinny, but he's not a short.
He's 5'9".
That is not a short king. Trust me.
That's huge for a player like Greg Dortch. That's
5'9" isn't a short king? Come on, Davis. 5'9"
just
by NFL standards might as well be like.
But Downs is not like a Wan'Dale, Dortch, Tutu near the line of scrimmage guy. He's all bombs. He's just bombs productions. Yeah. Same for Hyatt too, actually.
Yeah. The thing is with these two guys that I think is interesting, and I tried to make this point a couple shows ago, but I think sometimes we double count the fact that a player goes later than their alleged like consensus, you know, mock draft ranking. Like everyone was expecting Hyatt and Downs to be first round picks. That was like, if you looked at mock draft database, they were, you know, in the 30s, whatever. They fell to the 3rd round. And like, we sometimes like double punish those guys for that. Like 3rd round draft capital as a rookie is still like pretty solid for a wide receiver. We haven't had huge hits recently, but like Chris Godwin was a 3rd round pick. Michael Gallup, Deontay Johnson, like there's been plenty of good
Amon-Ra,
3rd round.
4th round.
Amon-Ra, 4th round, exactly, right? And like obviously like these camp storylines of like Jalen Hyatt's playing with the wide receiver or with the 3rd team offense, like obviously he is. Like it's June. It was June when those reports came out. They have a shit ton of wide receivers. Like I'm not expecting him to be playing with the starters in camp. So I like these guys, like these 3rd round wide receivers. I think at some point during the season, they're going to get a chance. It's a pretty high pick to spend on these guys. So especially when they're completely free, I kind of like this archetype of bet. It's like it's like when it's not completely comparable because they were second round picks, but people always talk about, Claypool and Higgins were completely free as second round picks in 2020. Obviously rookies have been priced up across the board, but you can still get pretty good draft capital rookies like completely free just because we decided we don't like these guys anymore because they went a little bit later than we expected. So I like this archetype of bet.
And I always push back when I forget who was saying of just like, you don't have to take any Giants wide receivers, just take Darren Waller and like log off. I mean, the whole reason people are applying that, I view it very similar to the three ambiguous running back backfields we see: the Saints, the Dolphins, and the Bears, where it's like, I don't even think you have to guess which one of those three is going to be a hit. I think you might be able to just guess 2 of 3 and you might be able to win on 2 of them. Same with these Giants. I don't even think you have to guess which one. You might be able to get 2 out of this cohort of 5 guys who ends up massively outperforming their ADP because they're just free. And unless you're just fully out on the Giants, which I don't really know why you wouldn't. They showed so much last year under Dayball. They're going to get more in the groove this year. Darren Waller, they add him in. Like, this is an offense I want to be in on. And you're going to give me ambiguity in this wide receiver room all at cost. And they're just a perfect backdoor stack. Like, I'm in on these Giants.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't draft Hodgins because Hodgins is just Travis Fulgham to me. Like, teams, he just doesn't matter. I think the winner is likely to be one of Wandale or Hyatt. I think those are the guys who are like most likely to be someone that you might actually have wanted to have drafted. Like, what Hodgins is just Allen Robinson. It's just like 500 yards and 5 touchdowns, maybe. Like, that's a good season for him. And that's not exciting.
Yeah. It's funny because I think everyone has different opinions about the Giants wide receivers. Personally, I'm not taking Wandale, and I'm not really taking much Campbell, and I'm taking the other guys. But I understand why people disagree with that. I just think I agree with Pete's larger point that, I really like the potential of this Giants offense. Like, everyone's treating Daniel Jones pass catchers like completely for dead, besides Waller. And, they passed more towards the end of the season. We saw Daniel Jones have that massive game, obviously in week 17. He would have been in Pat's lineup if Brady didn't also blow up that week. And then in the playoffs against the Vikings, he threw for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, also ran for 80 yards. Like, Hodgins had over 100 yards. Slayton had 80 plus yards. Like, I think the team they wanted to be kind of came through a bit at the end of the year last year. And that's obviously down narrative street, but Dayball always kind of has wanted to run pass first offenses. I don't think they're really going to do as much of the Daniel Jones designed run, run the entire offense through Saquon Barkley. I think they kind of showed that in the pieces they added this offseason that they want to throw more. So, yeah, I'm really excited about the Giants.
One other point about this, and who said it? Mookie said it in the chat. I have a hard time seeing these guys being free all summer. I mean, look no further than the Paris Campbell rise. I mean, that was what, like one training camp report that he was like looking good, and he already leapfrogged 2 players who are, in my opinion, more talented than him. So, like, if that one piece of news, think about how like an actual training camp report or a preseason game is going to rocket one of these guys up. You could see an 8-round jump for one of these guys. It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
Okay, cool. Well, like we said, kind of a dead news time. I don't think there's honestly some of these other wide receiver ADP faller movement. I think I'll keep an eye on it. It's kind of interesting that the first round wide receivers are slightly down across the board, but I've seen too much of this noise week to week to really think we need to talk too much about, Diggs, AJ Brown, Lamb, all going slightly down. I think that is mostly just noise. So let's move to talking about the weekly winner strategy. So I wanted to show this quickly. As is kind of tradition on the show, just kind of copying stuff that smarter people have done and repackaging it as our own is sort of an important piece of ADP chasing. So I read Hayden Wink's article. I read Chris G's article. I read Justin Herzling's article. And I kind of pulled out 9 strategies that those guys called out in their articles. So I think a lot of these are interesting, but Pete, I know you spent the most time thinking about it. You don't have to go off this list, but are any of these strategies or, any strategies that you want to talk about that you think you're really prioritize? Say you hop into a weekly winners draft. What's sort of like the first couple things you're thinking about once you enter the lobby?
Yeah. And I would say, so for me, I do think like the structure of how you build your team is by far the most important. And I do think like all this stuff with the stacking divisions in the bye weeks, I think that's very fun. And I think there's a time and place for it. I hate to use the word tiebreaker because that gets overused as a strategic cop out most of the time. But I really do think people need to reorient how they're thinking about drafting a team and really viewing it through a DFS lens. And like, I think one of the things that helped me frame it is I literally thought, let's even just like take the bench spots out of it. Let's say if you had to make a DraftKings lineup, which I believe is 9 spots, and it was fixed for the entire year. So no extra things. And you were just trying, and that got tossed into the Millie Maker each week, week 1, week 2, week 3. And you still had the normal salary constraint. So let's just assume Travis Kelce is going to cost a lot. Mahomes is. How would you go about building that roster knowing you can't touch it and none of the opponents can't touch it? And the thing I keep coming back to is that I would build through the elite onesies in that. I would want a top 6 or 7 quarterback who has access to a 40-point ceiling. I would want access to one of the top 5 or 6 tight ends who has access to a 20-plus point ceiling. And then I would look around for other value at wide receiver, value at running back, building that out. But the main thing I keep coming back to is the elite onesies who can separate. That's kind of the first like tentpole thing. And then the second thing I've been thinking about is I think always when we draft best ball teams, we want our early selections to inform what we do. I think in Best Ball Mania, it's a little more fluid. Like, all right, after 3 rounds, start to see how that's going to inform the rest of it. I think even more important, like the second you draft Cooper Kupp, you're saying, how do I win a Millie Maker with Cooper Kupp as the bedrock for this team? Or whether that's you're taking Travis Kelce. And so that part I need to flesh out a little bit more, but I do really think building around what you've already done. And this means pushing the structures to the max. And I'm not the first one to say it, but I do really like the 1 quarterback build, the 1 tight end, and then just load up on running back and wide receiver elsewhere. So those are kind of the 2 things knocking around in my head with it.
I like that idea of just giving up the EV of just being like 1 week, you're just not going to be eligible to win to get larger EV in the other weeks. My immediate response though was strategy 5 here on Sam's list, which is just giga stack 1 team, right? So basically every week you're heading in with, you've got 5 Eagles, 5 Chiefs, 5 Bills, 5 whoever, and just be like, the 3 weeks that those teams get pushed, or if they get an overtime game or whatever, you're just going to have like an unbelievable level of points there. Because I would guess, I would think people are probably not doing that. Again, anecdotally, I've not been in these rooms, so maybe they are, and maybe that's a strategy that is too popular, and it's just going to end up being 1v1s of like your RB2 for $20,000, and you just destroyed all your EV. But that was my first thought.
Yeah. So
I was just.
ahead,
I want you to go, Sam. I was just going to
Okay.
say, it flies in the face of how I was thinking about my DFS fixed roster spot. And to me, the cost of giga stacking it would be like, if you want to do it with the Panthers or Texans or whatever, but think about, you would never in your DFS lineup for 1 week do Kelce, Mahomes, Kadarius Toney, and Pacheco in the Millie Maker. Like, you would never do that. You're capping too much of your weekly ceiling. I think you're thinking about it more of like, I want to be live more weeks. But
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But
that's what
you
I'm
need
saying.
a 99.9 percentile outcome to make any money these weeks, and I think those guys are too negatively correlated on a week.
But you can get your 99th percentile weeks from the other parts of your roster. I actually think it's kind of a high floor strategy where in a way with these elite teams, because so often they're going to have QB1, running back 1, wide receiver 1, tight end.
But why do we want floor in this contest? Nothing about the payout structure indicates floor should be a consideration whatsoever.
More bites at the apple, right? You're going to have more live weeks, or you think that's wrong?
So
I just think. Oh, go ahead, Sam.
Maybe to bridge it, I do think it really depends on price. Like, for instance, I would be totally fine going Daniel Jones and all 5 of those Giants pass catchers we talked about, because I'm taking them 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, whatever. And then when I get a Daniel Jones blow up week, I know I'm live in any of those weeks. Sure. I guess, Darren Waller, he could fuck that up, right? But that's the idea, right? But I get what Pete's saying, where like with the Eagles, it gets a little tricky. Like, I think I'd be willing to take like 2 out of 3 of Goddard, Smith, AJ Brown, with Jalen Hurts, if that's even possible. That's like hard to do in a normal draft, so I'm guessing it's even harder to do now. But I wouldn't want to go fully overboard. But yeah, Chiefs, for instance, like if you want to go Mahomes and then like Sky Moore, MVS, Rashee Rice, Justin Watson, whatever, I think that's fine, right? Because it's cost adjusted. Like to Davis's point, I do think there is some element of like, you want to like Mahomes is going to have 4 or 5 massive weeks all year. Your other pieces are only going to go off at the same time that Mahomes goes off in like 1 or 2 of those weeks, right? Like, so I do kind of get the idea of like giving yourself multiple bites at the apple of like when the Chiefs go off, like your other pieces could fail some of the time. So I do kind of want to give myself like a couple chances on the Chiefs blow up game to get the right pieces to like match that. So I do think I see both of what you're saying. I think it's like it'd be very like price sensitive and cost adjusted to me.
Well, and again, and I realize it's not a perfect 1-for-1, but I do think thinking through that DFS lens, and Davis, think about it this way too, right? Like if you were to stack Mahomes up in a big tournament and like say all the Chiefs receivers were sub 4K, which we like saw happen, and you just were like, I'm going to fade Kelsey in the running game. I'm going to do Mahomes in 3 of the cheap wide receivers because it's going to chew up only 12K of my salary. But you wouldn't do 3 cheap wide receivers and Kelsey with the thing. And I kind of think about it this way too, where it's like,
actually, I think you would if it was, you could
not
you
for
could
the milli maker.
So think about it. You would never do that in DFS because your floor would be too low with the correlations there, right? So because there's no way that 4 Chiefs pass catchers are all going to land in an optimal lineup, but because effectively it's like the FanDuel drop score they used to have for NBA, where I just get to take the best of Richie James, MVS, and Sky's score for that week, and it doesn't matter if the other 2 guys get 0. You know, George Pickens puts up 18. And Greg Dortch gets 11 or whatever, and we call that good. I actually think you would do that if you had the ability to just select the best score of the contributing wide receiver. And also in a lot of these universes, I mean, this is more micro than macro strategy stuff, but like the fact that Kadarius Toney could so easily just not be a starting player for the Kansas City Chiefs actually makes these guys a little bit more interesting in this format. But the same thing would be true of like the Bills guys, right? Where, Shakir and Hardy, I think, are extremely good picks. Shakir, Hardy, and Knox are all extremely good picks with Josh Allen in this format. Maybe even better. Actually, in fact, almost assuredly better than they are in Best Ball Mania, because I don't think one of them is really going to win the job over the other.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think about of why I don't like the like expensive gigastack stuff is, again, if you're thinking about how, and I do think dupes are going to be a concern in here, and say like you're making that correlated bet, Chiefs go Burr, but then there's going to be teams that hit the individual parlay of like, this was the Toney week with Pacheco, with Richie James, and they're going to have those 3 pieces by themselves without all the other extra Chief stuff because they hit that parlay better than you. Just the way we see it in the Millie Maker, right? Like there's so many times you might be on the block, but they just took the one piece instead of all of them. And that's the thing I think you have to realize is like, the top 3 Chief scores, how many hundreds and hundreds of teams are going to have those at the top of the leaderboard? And I think using too much to correlate on a team is going to really limit both the uniqueness and the firepower of the rest of your lineup.
Yeah. So I agree with that. I think what I'm thinking through, Pete, is like the reason it's different from DFS, right, is even that scenario you just described where another team has a better version of your team because they just took the right 3 pieces and they didn't take the Noah Gray and the Justin Watson and all this extra garbage at the end. Like even for that team, like just inherently in the structure of best ball, you can only start 8 out of your 18 pieces. So like even the teams that smash, like quote unquote, wasted 10 picks on something else, right? So like I'm okay with like wasting one of my 10 picks like on a correlated piece, like given that it's like cost adjusted, like I'm okay knowing when I take Richie James in the 17th on my Chief stack, like knowing that could be a wasted piece because the opportunity cost was, like we talked about, Devante Parker or Isaiah Hodgins. But where I agree with you is like these really uncorrelated weekly outcomes that are really expensive, I want to be very careful to avoid. Like the quarterback running back stacks, I love in Best Ball Mania because of how it can work in the playoff weeks where like Daniel Jones could go off 1 week, Barkley could go off 1 week. Like they're not correlated week to week, but that could carry you to the playoffs. I'm probably like those QB running back stacks or like running back wide receiver on the same team stacks. I'm like very more cautious to avoid if they're really expensive. But given they're cheap enough, I'm actually like feel like I'm okay, like quote unquote, like wasting or like overstacking a certain game, knowing that like every team has to waste 10 picks, right? But again, go ahead.
The one exception I would make for it is because I do think the uniqueness element is going to actually end up being big is I would want to use, say in that Mahomes example, I would really like to use Justin Ross, Richie James, fucking Justin Watson or whatever. You're basically trying to hit. Remember the Mac Hollins week last year where just like out of nowhere he dropped like
30
I do
remember because he was 30% in cash and I didn't have him.
So you use the correlation tiebreaker to get you on these unique pieces. And then, hey, the majority of these Chiefs are going to be 100% rostered in this contest. But if you get that 1 week, that's going to be the unique Chiefs piece that levels you up. Whereas someone was mentioning like, oh, in DFS, Mahomes would be 20%, but here he's 8%. 8% of 261,000 is over 20,000 Mahomes teams. So like the 8% doesn't mean much when we're talking about 20,000 teams in a given week that you're competing with. And that's why I just want to think,
but start to break it down a little bit. Let's say I'm gonna conservatively call it 10% of teams are going to be constructed so poorly that it's impossible to win, right? So knock out 2,000 Mahomes teams there. Then start to segment it down more. How many Mahomes teams have Kelsey, right? 4% probably, roughly, or 4% of the total teams ish. Because we have some ownership data and Kelsey and Mahomes are the most common round 1 and round 2 pairing. So if you're doing non-Kelsey Mahomes teams, then break it down even further and go into what you're saying, right? Justin Watson, Richie James, MVS. You're starting to get into it sounds like a lot of teams, but the total number of teams that have something like no Kelsey, Mahomes, MVS, Rice, and Richie James it's going to be much lower than it sounds when you say it that way.
Yeah, and I would just argue that it's still a bigger team.
But it's still 100 teams or something.
My biggest pushback is just like giga stacking at expensive prices where you're paying a premium and you're not feathering in the unique guys at the end. That's where I think you can get into trouble.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. So we probably just disagree on the degree to which that. But
with the Eagles, would you be taking like Boston Scott and Quez Watkins and stuff like that? Because I think you probably should.
Right, but I wouldn't do that. I would just never start my draft Hurts, or let's just say, who would you need to take first? AJ Brown, Hurts, and say Devante miraculously falls, and then you go Goddard. Then like I'm just never going to start with those 4 in there because I just think I'm capping too much of my weekly ceiling by giga stacking those guys. I would rather go Hurts or AJ Brown, Hurts, and then Gainwell, Quez, and whoever else you want to toss in at the end, like the super cheap. Like that's how I would prefer to play it through an elite offense. Because it goes back to that thing, and we're going to hop in a draft here too. I do really think thinking about the distinction of overstacking, let's go back to Best Ball Mania, like overstacking a team weeks 1 through 14. I honestly think that's like game theory optimal. You're betting on undervalued offenses. If the offense rolls, you're going to be getting those points every week, different directions. The reason you get in trouble with it is in the 3 uncorrelated tournaments where you're needing them to essentially go for 40 points 3 weeks in a row. And if you're too massively exposed to one offense, you're likely to flame out one of those weeks. And so this format lends itself way more. They're literally 17 uncorrelated tournaments. So you're trying to hit the 99th percentile outcome in those weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it becomes, you're exactly correct. Like the cheaper the offense is, the more the correlated bet benefits you because it's showing that the prices were wrong.
Yeah.
We can see talking about this. I just, I wanted to get us going in a draft as well.
Yeah.
All right,
I think it's super interesting.
I'm in here. I hopped in too.
Davis couldn't resist. Couldn't just join. So it's me and Sam versus Davis. You're cut out of this one.
Well, what am I gonna do, dude? The EV on my time, bro? Come on here.
Davis, are you in the same? Are you in the same one as us?
Yeah, I don't see you. Oh yeah,
he is. He is. Okay.
So, well,
right,
how
so
about this from an ADP perspective, Sam? And this goes back to my kind of the onesie things. We are seeing, and these do have different ADPs than Best Ball Mania. We have Travis Kelce at 1-3. So it does appear that the market is starting to value the elite onesies more in this format.
Yeah, and this is tough for me. I don't know entirely how I feel, but if this is really true that like tight ends should be valued this high in like a 1 week format, or quarterback should be valued this high in a 1 week format, then I think it suggests to me that like they're undervalued now. And I understand the tournaments are different. I'm not saying they're the same, but like, man, I still think that like Travis Kelce going 3, like Jamar Chase, there's a difference between a Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and CMC spike week versus a Travis Kelce spike week. Like,
Yeah.
No, I don't think that's
no,
true.
I think the math.
Kelsey had a
For
4
pure
touchdown
raw
game
numbers.
last year.
But
Did
Kelce,
he?
can Kelce
can't
get to
put up a
50 like Chase
He can't
did?
put up a 50 burger. He
He
can't
put up a 50
55.
burger, but he can put up
Yeah.
40.
All I'm just saying, and maybe Kelce is this unique unicorn, whatever. I think it's like a little overrated that like we always talk about, when you get this elite tight end spike week, it's like separates so much. Man, when you get the Joe Mixon 55-point game, like that separates more. Like I don't know, like
that is true. That is true.
So I just think that like it's like I get the elite onesies should go higher,
comparatively though, because the burden of scoring is lower at tight end, you're gonna get more, right? Because 27 from Kelce might beat every other tight end by 10 in a given.
Well, the thing is that
hang on, let's make this pick, Sam. We're on the clock. Eckler goes Diggs, Lamb, Bijan, Adams, Chubb. Who do you want to do?
I kind of like Lamb just because we can get the quarterback for cheaper. What do you guys think about that?
That's who I would take if I was you guys.
I also think like, I mean, I still like Diggs, but I think Lamb has higher single week upside with how much the Bills pass the ball around. Like Diggs is just never going to have a game anymore where he's getting like a 30% target share the way they run that offense.
Yeah. I still think.
Do you guys agree that this format is absolutely perfect for zero RB?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it depends. Like, I think it depends what you do, but I definitely can see that. Let's see. So, should we be targeting? This is where, like, is this too early to start thinking about like divisions?
No, I don't
like,
think so. Because
this is the part of the game tree I haven't explored yet. So, if we want to start galaxy braining some of that stuff, I also the point where I was saying where I feel pretty strongly about the onesies, like I have no problem taking Mahomes or Hurts here in building out elite onesies backwards.
I agree with that as well.
I would take Mahomes over Hurts just because we're going to miss out on Hurts' top pass catchers, right? Whereas Mahomes, we can stress
test our idea here. Hang on. I got to push back on this in the chat. Zero RB teams are dead early. Why make your teams dead early? You are not trying to win every week. Like, I'm sorry, you cannot win every week. You are trying to build a team that fucking runs hotter than the sun on the most beautiful day that God ever created for 1 week.
Do you want to min cash 3 times for a little 2x?
If you want to mid cash this contest, like I won't shame the mid cashers, but you're playing the wrong tournament if you're trying to turn your $15 into 30. Like
what's the right tournament? What's the right thing to do with my $15?
Go play the individual 12 person. The MFL 10s, are those still going? Go do an MFL 10.
They're best.
I just realized
now.
We just made a genius pick because the NFC East plays the AFC West this year, which we totally knew when we made this pick.
Yes.
So,
Sam, keep me updated on the divisional correlations.
Yeah. So case, I guess that means any. Fuck. This is where I've never done one of these. So like in theory, we should be targeting players in either Kansas City's division, so Raiders, Chargers, Denver,
Broncos.
Or like Giants, Commanders, Dallas, Eagles. I guess maybe should we just say fuck the Eagles because we're not going to get their best players at this point. And like,
I love saying fuck the Eagles. Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do that. This is
I understand why people are so frothy for this, right? Like it's honestly, this is more fun to think about than Best Ball Mania right now, but I do think it's also one of those things where like if some bro started spinning up sims and like doing all the math right now, I think they'd have a huge edge on even badge bros who have done no math and are just, thinking about thinking.
Well, that's why I think the structure is the biggest edge to hammer out first. And basically just really like the whole reason like pushing structures in Best Ball Mania works, right? Is because you're wanting to like supercharge the other parts of your roster. If you do a hyper fragile build and you only take 3 running backs, you're like betting that you're right. I think you want to take that ethos and push it even further in this thing. You were trying to just bet you're right for a single week. And based on these bets, like we shouldn't take another quarterback. Like we have made such a big bet that Mahomes is going to be the top scorer 6 out of these 17 weeks. And we're now going to build a team that can hopefully take it down one of those 6 weeks. Mahomes is the top scorer.
Yeah. I think if you go elite quarterback early, you should. I can see taking 2 quarterbacks if you like pass on the elites for sure. But with how we've built, should we go Keenan Allen? Chargers play the Chiefs twice.
I'm down.
What do you guys think? They also do.
I would see this would be. I would much rather take Debo because Debo feels like a guy who can put up multiple 40 burgers over the course of a season.
I would.
Yeah. This is where you get into like the individual player versus the correlation. Like I don't feel strongly either way.
Correlation feels low on Keenan.
The Keenan on Chiefs blow up games where the Chiefs fucking steamroll the Chargers. Isn't Keenan going 12 for 180 and 2 touchdowns? I don't know.
Wow, this room is about to let me cook. The Wilkinator better not take Debo right here. He's going to.
Oh, I forgot
why would you
Davis.
Yourself?
I forgot that Davis doesn't have input on our teams because he has his own team. So,
this is a good point too about some of the divisional stuff. Is some of those games fall in week 18, and the weekly winners contest does only go through 17 weeks.
Justin Fields feels like the perfect guy for this format because you don't even need to take any of his teammates with him. Just get the 37-point week where he scores 3 rushing touchdowns.
I was thinking about this too, but I think I'm almost always going to do Komet with my Fields teams. Just because I do
touchdowns,
think they're so correlated. And if he has that massive, I think Komet.
Well, there's no scenario in which Komet finishes as the top tight end in a week without multiple touchdowns. There's no 11 reception, 180-yard games in there.
What do you like, Sam?
I was thinking either Judy or Mike Williams.
Yeah,
probably Judy. Just because I think like we said, in an individual week, I think Keenan and Mike Williams they both could explode, I guess. But
yeah,
I like leaning towards Judy there.
I do too, and also I think I personally just like Quentin Johnson cost adjusted more than Mike Williams, so that always helps me like break the tie. Whereas we just talked about like, man, the Sutton stuff is tough if we're looking for like a Denver guy that really has that ceiling early.
Yeah.
So Davis, you did talk about Ramondre. The chat is divided. Some people like Bully running back over 0 RB in this format. What do you think in there with the Ramondre pick, other than just being a nice value relative to his regular ADP?
I mean, it just seems I think it frees me up from panicking and making a bad pick like a Miles Sanders or a Pacheco, like naked or whatever. Like just mentally, it soothes me a little bit to see the one running back in there. And I mean, Ramondre, we've already seen insane workload weekly ceilings from him. Like over the course of the year, could Pierre Strong, could Ty Montgomery, could Kevin Harris work in more? Sure. But there were multiple games last year where Ramondre was playing 90% of the running back snaps. So feels like it sets it. Like he will have one game with 30 or more half PPR points and probably a handful of 20 plus, even if his fantasy points per game is only like 18.5 or whatever. And also, I mean, I don't think he correlates horribly with Mac Jones. If I wanted to go that direction in round 18 as my second quarterback, it feels like he could catch a touchdown, 2 touchdowns or whatever. Like that doesn't like the theory behind Ramondre is that he will be working in the passing game.
LG asking our thoughts on this start from Team 4, CMC, Pollard, Jacobs. So, I mean, I don't love this for this format. However, if I did do this, and I think it's viable, I would not take another running back probably the entire draft in this format.
I think it's interesting to do those because like the data does show the top 12 running backs by ADP just have a huge percentage of their spike week. So if you just go 3 running backs and then stack up, like this guy took Watson, if his plan is to stack up like pass catchers on offenses with quarterbacks later. I kind of like
Yeah.
that, where like the running backs are less correlated. You just take the good ones, and then let me try to hit the nuts on some like less popular passing attacks. I think that's definitely viable. But
I do like that idea. Yeah.
I'll be watching out to see if he stops at 3 or I think maybe 4 running backs is okay, but definitely no more than 4 on that build.
Thinking about this more, I love the idea of stacking the Lions and the Saints because dome games just get fucking weird, right? Like we don't know what you remember the Detroit Seattle game. It was like the 11th highest scoring game in NFL history last year. Like I do love that idea of just consistently getting exposure to those nuts games.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Sam, we're on the clock here. The divisional bros are going to have to help me out. I'm not seeing the board in that divisional thing.
Fuck. Do we do Tony?
Is Tony the pick on this team?
I'm not.
For me, it'd be Tony, or I would take one of these running backs. Like I'd take Aaron Jones or Tony.
Do we have any correlations? Let's just get Tony, and then if we do want to go the running back route,
okay.
Davis is probably not going to be taking a running back here.
I'm not. I'm gonna double tap. I'm gonna double tap 2 wide receivers here.
5th round Tony is painful. But Pete, to your point, like this is where I start thinking through like to the thing of like take 3 running backs and stop. Like, shouldn't we stop with like 5 or 6 wide receivers in this team too, potentially? Like
the only
all right, I got a question for you guys here.
I was just going to say, Sam, I would on this team be very interested in the Richie James, Justin Ross, or even one more of like the MVS. Like we're just spraying, praying the wide receivers late on Chiefs.
Should I take Waller here? What do you guys think about taking Waller ahead of ADP to lock in the last elite tight end? Really, that I could even possibly correlate. Do you think that's just giving up too much ADP value?
No, I don't think so.
Because I was going to take Lockett, but he just went.
I mean, Waller's not coming back to you.
My fucking queue dusted anyway.
Dude, you did.
I had my queue in the wrong order. I thought I had Deontay Johnson at the top, but I had all my Lions starred, so I guess it's a non-starter.
Sam, I would say too, this is the spot where like I'm starting to like really think through like my thesis and how I'm playing it. And even though it's ahead at ADP technically or whatever, but I would give both Waller and Goddard a long, hard look at this spot. Maybe not Goddard because we're out on the Eagles. Waller goes, so maybe that's
So I'm okay with Goddard. I actually look, the Eagles and Chiefs have the same bye week, so I like that element of it. They play each other. Goddard could be the piece that goes off. He's the last elite tight end. I kind of like it, to be honest.
I think my just hunch is that it is interesting that you said like, so Kelsey's going ahead of his BBM ADP. George Kittle goes ahead of his BBM ADP. Pitts goes way ahead here. Hawkinson actually goes slightly after, and then Waller and Goddard. So it's like some of these guys are arbitrarily getting pushed up and others not. But I do think on the whole, they all should be getting pushed up this cohort.
I agree. Also, don't take David Montgomery 40 spots ahead of ADP to win weekly winners.
If you were drafting with me and Sam, dude, we just 3 brains building this beautiful team, and instead you had to go rogue because of the EV of your time. How much are we paying you over here on ADP chasing? Not enough, apparently.
Free 99 for my services. So it's good.
The last couple of paychecks haven't cashed. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, to keep telling Karain, it's something with his like offshore banking account. The checks are bouncing.
Yeah, so this is interesting, Pat, because I don't know. I guess fuck it, we can just give away our strategy, but like we definitely are going to be interested in probably 2 of the Chiefs' other like rando guys later.
Feels like you're almost dead to have a Mahomes team without 3 of his pass catchers.
Yeah, and like I just want like I'm not a believer in Tony. I want us to be live for Mahomes spike week, so I want to be tacking on these guys. So does that mean like I think that almost means like we should be just going like heavy running back for the next couple rounds unless something really pops out, because we don't want like we bet big on Judy, Keenan, CD already. Like don't we probably just want like 6 wide receivers on this team and like just play the lotto game with a bunch of running backs to try to get spike weeks.
Yeah. The only thing I would say is I'm still fine being conscious of like where the value pockets of the draft are. And like in Best Ball Mania right now, generally, like the running backs are the best picks on the board because all these wide receivers have been wiped out. Like if we were to get a big running back faller here of Sanders and Pierce, but otherwise, like all the best picks on the board are going to be wide receiver. And then you start to hit that running back range where all of those picks really tilt to a running back. So that's the only thing of like, I don't think we have to blindly lock in on a position if we don't like how the value's lining up.
Why is Michael Pittman, why is there a 30 spot gap in where he's being picked in this?
I have no idea.
That seems bizarre because you'd still want him with Richardson.
Yeah.
I think so.
I think Pittman had I see him as like a very high weekly upside guy. So that's, I don't know, maybe that's just my personal evaluation, but I see him as like a bad projections long bet, but like a pretty sick, like weekly upside with Richardson.
I agree.
So that's interesting.
So like on here, I was going to be excited about Quentin Johnston kind of with our Chargers bet. If you want to go Pierce, I'm fine with it. I also like Addison. I would probably be Pierce, just knowing we're going to be taking wide receivers later. I'm fine.
I would never, it's funny because I would never take Addison over or Pierce over Addison in any draft, but I think just like, I'm trying to think through, like we do want to get some running back ceiling. And I think we want a lot of stabs at running backs in this next couple round range, I think. So it's almost more of like a volume thing than like individually liking Pierce over Addison as a bet.
I don't mind Pierce there. And if I think of like, I don't know, I've also been on the camp too, where I think Quentin Johnston's like 95th percentile, like upside cases are better than Addison too. I would have pounded the table for Johnston, but I didn't mind Pierce over Addison there.
Yeah. Johnston would have been fun.
Davis,
I don't really know what to do. I was like, my brain felt so flustered right there.
After we make this pick, I do want to go back. Hayden had a comment that I think we should talk about because I think it's interesting relative to this team and the tournament. But Sam, looking here now, we're back into that spot with like, do you toss on Pacheco with a Mahomes team? Like,
no, you guys want McKinnon. You guys want McKinnon.
Yeah. Okay, we don't have the choice. I'm kind of glad we don't have the choice. Doubt. So we already took CD. Like I was saying pound running back, but I don't know if, like, I don't really like Dalvin or Rashad White. You could talk me into James Conner here. Let me see if there's any other tiebreakers.
I like going with basically playing this Dallas premium double stack without the quarterback.
Yeah, I like it. Let's do it.
Okay, I wanted to pull up the thing from Hayden said drafting someone like Goddard without an elite QB seems like a death sentence. If he goes off, then Hurts goes nuts. Not an issue with Mahomes here, though. The reason I disagree is because the weeks we're going to be live to win are the weeks Mahomes is the best quarterback in the pool. And there are certainly weeks where Goddard could have 2 touchdowns and Hurts doesn't outscore Patrick Mahomes. I think it's more of an issue if you don't have that elite QB and you have Hurts, because then you're going to get lapped there. But we have one of the few quarterbacks who can hang with Hurts in points per game. And we've also seen the Eagles offense be very concentrated about one player. Like you get the AJ Brown game, you get the Devonta Smith game, you get the Dallas Goedert game. So I don't mind just getting the structural elite upside there, knowing Mahomes is going to keep pace with Hurts in those scenarios where we're winning.
Yeah. I think, Hayden's comment, I feel like, he said not an issue with Mahomes. I would agree with him, I think, right? Like if we didn't take an elite quarterback when we're trying to go head to head with fucking Matt Stafford versus Jalen Hurts, I would definitely not want Goddard on those teams. I don't think. So it is, Goddard is a very interesting pick. Like I think you have to be careful about when you're taking him.
Yeah. Okay. That's got to strike off some players attached to elite QBs if you don't have one yourself. And this is why I want that elite quarterback and that elite tight end, because they kind of work in conjunction with each other, right? Where you're making sure that you're not getting bodied by any of the field from just like a ceiling perspective
Yes.
at those positions.
Yeah. Because that feels like it's going to be a real problem in this is just, weeks that Kelsey, Mahomes, Hurts, whatever, that these guys go off, it's going to be so hard to not have elites at those positions. Like, I don't know. It feels like if you don't have at least one elite quarterback or tight end, it feels like you almost can't win a week. I don't know. I'm sure obviously that's not true, but that's just kind of the way intuitively that it feels.
I think I almost think that like if we're pricing up Mahomes, Allen, etc., then like Daniel Jones, like Anthony Richardson, Tua, they should be way priced up too, because I think there are like a set of those quarterbacks. Like we've seen it with Daniel Jones. He can have that massive spike week rushing. We've seen it with Tua. He can have that massive spike week. Like I think those guys, if we are pricing up the quarterbacks, those guys should be elevated too. Like I don't know. I'm like kind of okay in Best Ball Mania, maybe doing like Stafford, like Kyler Murray and CJ Stroud. I don't love it, but like I think it's viable in this tournament. I think that strategy is maybe like closer to dead.
I do
like
too.
The piecemeal together 3 quarterbacks type stuff.
Yeah, little floor,
like I'm okay.
Little ceiling, little starting. Like
I love so much Anthony Richardson, Derek Carr, Brock Purdy. To me, that is like the perfect 3 quarterback Best Ball Mania room, and I would like never do that in this. I think.
The other thing, so real quick on the roasting us for our Kadarius Toney, I don't even think Sam and I collectively like Toney. I bet we're both way underweight on him. But when you don't have Kelsey and we're betting on Mahomes to be a top quarterback, like
why do people demand
Toney's coming along for the ride for that?
Hang
on, let Sam and I pick here.
Yeah,
I mean, you got one guy to take.
Gibson or Sky Moore would be the 2 that I would be into.
I don't know.
Go ahead.
I would probably go Gibson.
I don't mind waiting on receiver.
We had
the other guy
many options in Kansas City. Sorry, what were you going to say? What was the other
guy? Maybe I won't say him in case he comes back to us.
Okay.
What were you saying, Davis?
It's just this guy, like these Justin Ross slappies. We had another Justin Ross slappy. Like he's never going to play a snap in the NFL. Why? People got to stop. Enough.
I just realized Washington is in the NFC East, so that was another genius pick from us stacking the divisions.
Thank you. I love recognizing our genius after the fact. Yeah.
High T running back room. Ramondre, David Montgomery, AJ Dillon. A lot of T. A lot of big quads. Big quads.
Quad season.
Well, is Ramondre high T or not? Or is Ramondre a hero RB for 0 RB bros?
He's kind of in the middle. He's not near as high T as like Jacobs or Derrick Henry. Not even.
Oh, yeah. Derrick Henry way worse for this contest because you only get him against the Texans twice.
So I was going to suggest Rashad Penny as a guy that I just think has just massive single game. I mean, we've seen it. And we have a slight bet on the Eagles here.
I would smash Penny. I would go Penny.
Because the point I was going to start to bring up, and like we talk about all the different strategy considerations for this tournament, I do think like for me, the second one, honestly, after just pure like structure would be who are the players that legitimately have like 30-point upside in a single week scenario. And I know you're not going to be able to find those guys at every single portion of the draft, but I do think some of the running backs in this range, Penny specifically, have that upside like way more. Like thinking of like, I don't know, even Penny versus like AJ Dillon. And I like both of these bets, but it isn't Penny getting to 30 points at a higher frequency than AJ Dillon is over like a simulation of 1,000 games.
Probably, yeah.
But I think the point is they both have, like, I think we've seen it. If Aaron Jones goes down, I think Green Bay is comfortable with AJ Dillon workhorse back, and like he could fall into enough volume where it could happen. I'm just like the Eagles offense. That's where I break the tie between those two guys. Is just like they both need some things to fall into place for it to work, but I just feel so much better with the Eagles offense than Jordan Love. So,
but I do like, I guess that is like, and I mean, we were kind of having that conversation with Keenan versus Debo, right? Where, and I think I have in my head, obviously, right? Like my biases of like, this guy has upside, this guy doesn't. But like, I do think being able to like quantify, like kind of like the bell curve, like range of outcomes for these guys hitting their 95th percentile ceiling and how frequently that occurs. Like going back to our whole better and best ball joke from 2 years ago of like, which of these guys, because the 15-point weeks, like that is very valuable in Best Ball Mania for just getting.
But it doesn't fucking matter in this.
Exactly. And so I'm saying I think we should be even tilting the ADP board even heavier in favor of that. I just want to make sure you're not making big mistakes because you're doing bro science of like, this guy has more upside, but it's like, does he actually? But with a guy like Penny, I feel like we have enough of a track record to know that being the case.
Yeah. I feel like honestly, sometimes people overlook just like, it's like stupid analysis and no one wants to do it, but just like looking at a player's history and seeing if they have done it. Like,
yes,
I say it with Devante Parker. It's like, it's stupid to like read Devante Parker's box scores. Like you feel like an idiot for doing it, but like he's had huge weeks in the past. Like a lot of the guys that pick 190 haven't. Like that sounds like dumb analysis, but I think it's like, sometimes that's the best we can do, right? Like if a guy's done it before, it kind of means something to me.
I love that Davis is doing his Swolecast bit where he has like a long side conversation in the chat during the host. You're still arguing about Justin Ross?
The Justin Ross shit pisses me off so much. It really does. It's like the Chiefs have 19 wide receivers and people just keep, like Richie James. Never mind. We don't need to do this.
This now, Sam, we also find ourselves in another spot here where like there's no reason. I don't think we take Dak. We've already made our bet, but that he's starting to really fall because no one else.
No, you guys should absolutely take Dak. What are you?
I think at this point I would. I'm not
you've
sure
given
about
yourself
it.
Another out.
It does like.
Hang on, real quick, Sam. Should we do McKinnon first and then?
Yeah,
see what
McKinnon first.
But Davis, this goes back to the thing. We don't want other outs. We are building this team around Mahomes being the top scorer, and we're going to benefit.
My guess is that that's probably pretty wrong to do with only one out when you have 18 roster spots.
So,
my guess is that Leone or someone is going to run the math and be like, just building a team with one out is bad.
I see both sides of it, but like Pete, don't you think this is like a very specific circumstance where we've been betting on all NFC East teams? Like Dak has fallen like four. I feel like in general you're right, but like I think it reaches a point where I'm like, look, we only spent like an 11th round pick on McKinnon and a 5th round pick on Tony. Like those guys.
Here's what I would say. This is where it's going to get interesting. I would rather further build out our bet on Dallas with Michael Gallup here than taking Dak.
No,
Okay.
that's it has to be wrong. I would
take Rashee Rice actually over Gallup.
Well,
I'm completely fine with that. I really don't. I think people are getting way too caught up on wanting to be live multiple weeks in this tournament as opposed to trying to win it 1 week.
Now,
go look
Peter,
at the payout structure, Davis.
Peter, this is terrible, dude. I feel confident in this. That only building it to have good EV for one team, for one group of players to spike is, I mean, I just know for a fact if you started to game out the EV that having the two chances at $20,000 first place, theoretically, instead of one on a given week, you're going to be much better off.
Because you're watering down both of those two avenues chances for getting there.
I disagree that it's watering it down because the Dak part is so key and the McKinnon part will be a very small key. I mean,
the Dak part isn't key because Dak doesn't separate from the quarterback field when he hits.
Well, I mean, that's not true if you look at the entirety of his career. Now, you could argue it's true in this context with McCarthy and Schottenheimer. Sure, I could maybe be swayed by that, but I'm saying let's take micro stuff out of it, macro apply it. Would I rather have two quarterbacks, 3 pass catchers each, or one quarterback, 5 pass catchers with that one quarterback, or 5 teammates? I would rather have the 2 with 3 of their teammates as opposed to 1 with 5 of his teammates.
Yeah. I think people.
I'm extremely confident in this. We need Leone to run the numbers.
Yeah, I think people are going to play this format way too scared. Davis, it's the same way of how many 150 max are in DFS, lock a QB wide receiver stack or a double stack, and
They
then
just do whatever their
optimize
fucking
around
computers tell them, Peter. They're cowards. They just do. They just.
I'm telling you, the
they press their
computers.
little button on their computer.
I think there's
you're
a
playing
point
too
where,
scared.
like Pete, let's say you're the extreme, like you're not taking Dak in like round 18, like in this build. Like, would you take it that far? Like, or is there a price at which on this build you would have taken Dak?
No, I think there is. I do think in
Okay.
the same way, like I've taken Kyler Murray 40 picks past ADP on a Jalen Hurts team as my third quarterback. Like I will tilt it here. But when we're building up, we have I'm glad you brought up Rashee Rice, but we have such a big bet on Mahomes here, and to pass over like one of his potential upside picks just make no sense.
I agree there. We needed Rashee. I think we should.
But this argument is also suggesting
What
that
are the running
Mahomes
backs
is going to
here?
be the quarterback one every week, which will not happen.
I would go probably Algier for the contingent upside, or one of the Chicago backs.
I was thinking of I really like the contingent value of Algier here, right? Because we do not care about any standalone value. This isn't a scenario where Bijan Robinson gets hurt.
Yeah.
The 9 points that Devin Singletary grinds out,
Especially when we have Pierce.
Matters absolutely not at all.
I think, Davis, where we fundamentally disagree, I really think how massive this contest is and how hard it's going to be to finish in the top 10. I really do not think you should be worrying about, like, can I have a good team this week? And then
I think that's very reductivist. I think that's very just live a little type vibes. Like I think you want to have more. I think whatever the correct decision to add expected value is right. I'm pretty confident my side is right. Obviously, I'm not a fucking mathematician, so I could definitely be wrong, but I'm pretty confident that the equity of having the multiple teammates.
I think we're trapped by our other best ball drafting, and it's very fun. And we're so used to getting multiple quarterbacks, multiple double stacks, all that. In the way these uncorrelated tournaments work in Best Ball Mania, where you can like ping pong back and forth, and you don't need the 99th percentile outcome. You just need like 80th percentile on those stacks to get you through. In this, you need the tippity top. You need the fucking nuts in the milli maker to hit it here. And I think you're capping your nut upside there with the quarterback.
261,000 though. It's again, I'm saying 10%
I'll
of these
Mims
or
I was going to say Mims or Jerome Ford. What do you like?
I'll go Mims. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it. All right.
I think we can actually stop on. I think we can stop on KC stuff because we got Mahomes triple stack now, right?
It would only be if we wanted to add a uniqueness pick in round 18, but I think structurally we can stop.
So I did. Yeah, I guess since we're going one quarterback, one tight end, we could do like 8 running backs and 8 wide receivers. I did. So I want to say one thing on your guys' debate, because I think it's interesting, and I think like it is something that needs to be simulated out, because like I think it's really complicated. But like I think there is some element, Pete, to where you do want like two outs from quarterbacks, and I'm not sure in our specific instance it was optimal. I'm not saying that, but like in general, you're gonna have your 2 teams. Say you have 2 team stacks, right? You're then going to have a cohort of like 12 other players. And when that like uncorrelated cohort that's not attached to your quarterback stacks goes off, you also need your quarterback stack to go off, right? And like giving yourself 2 chances at that quarterback stack going off when your other cohort goes off. Like I think there is something to that. Now, when you spend a second round pick on Mahomes, maybe you say, there's no point in trying to game that out, but it still is like we always talk about a better version of the teams, and like this is a huge tournament, 200,000 teams, but like the combinatorics of like 18 individual players, like is still like no one's gonna have an identical team to you.
Probably not even 10 overlapping players, right? Even the combinatorics of 10 overlapping players. How often is that going to happen? I'm sure it will happen. I'm sure someone could pull up an instance where, they're sitting there and 10 players are duped. But even that is crazy. And even getting into how many teams have Dak, CeeDee, Cooks, Gallup, Jake Ferguson or something, even that number is way lower than your napkin math would think, because the combinatorics are just so intense.
The thing too, I would maybe be a little bit more open to with the second quarterback is on the profile of the quarterback and what kind of upside they have. I just do not think with Dak, with how little he runs, that he has a lot of opportunities of separating from the rest of the quarterback field. So that's the point. I think I can capture all the benefits of a Dak good season through his pass catchers. Now, if we wanted to have the argument of like, okay, Anthony Richardson falling, and it's like he rips off a couple 50-yard touchdown runs like we saw from Fields.
Well, the running quarterbacks
then
are
I'm open to
different
it.
because the running quarterbacks are different in your team too, specifically because Richardson could be the highest scoring quarterback in a given week and not bring any of his teammates with him into the optimal lineup. So that makes it different.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Go
Hang
ahead.
on. We can still keep talking about it. I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
Like people are saying in the chat, this is literally the crux of the contest. Like what we're debating and like how you push it is like why the contest is fun. Let's see here.
I still like these Miami or the Carolina.
I like
yeah.
I like Mostert a lot in this format. Do you prefer him to Jeff Wilson? I like both, but Mostert's probably more the home run hitter.
Yeah. Mostert's fine. I don't have a strong preference.
So we're at a 1-6-7-1 build. This is like how my builds in these, at least my fast draft build last night and some of my slow draft ones are shaping up. I think we're probably two more running backs and a wide receiver.
Yeah, I was thinking like a second tight end. I think could make some sense with Goddard because like we do talk about like the elite should be priced up because when they separate, it's so big. But like, there's weeks where the tight end one scores like 16 points, and like, I don't know. I guess I don't want to like Goddard's gonna have so many duds this year. Like that, do we want to bake in just like a tight end that can get us 12? Yeah, I'm
not opposed to a second tight end in this build, and this would be where I would really want to be specific with like kind of the profiles. You know, we're targeting, like, I do like Gesicki. I think he's like a 2 touchdown type guy. If you wanted to play a contingent bet with like an Isaiah Likely, Andrew, like that's kind of interesting to me as a second tight end.
You can maybe wait and grab it. Should we grab another running back first? Like,
yeah.
I'd probably go like Hubbard, CPAT, Jeff Wilson.
I like Hubbard just because I do think he could, if Sanders gets hurt, I mean, he's probably getting close to 20
he's
touches.
pure contingent value.
He's good contingent, yeah.
Davis, what did you do here? Claypool and Chandler?
I'm just mega stacking the 2 quarterbacks that I have. I have a running back with each of my quarterbacks. I have 2 wide receivers with Goff, 1 wide receiver with Fields, and then I have Kmet and Laporta with them as well.
Yeah.
I'm doing 2 bites at the apple.
Yeah. It's really what other ADP shifts do you guys think we might see in this contest relative to Best Ball Mania? Like we got our guy Millionaire Karain writing threads about Robert Woods out here. Like Robert Woods should be going undrafted.
Can we stop? Contest. Can we just the guy wins $2 million and the next thing you fucking know, he's writing multi-pronged threads about a guy who is like so unlikely to matter because he's Robert Woods. I mean, it's really, it's just, I couldn't believe it. He, I don't know, man. Money really changes you.
But I do think but it comes to my point with this contest, right? Like that kind of production and
useless
in this format too. And a lot of the stuff, even when we're talking about the dead roster spots, I do not give a fuck about dead roster spots in this contest. Like I have to care about them for Best Ball Mania. And you're not doing dumb stuff, right? You're not taking Jamison Williams in the second round.
But Jamison Williams is way better for this contest than Best Ball Mania.
100%. Yeah.
I guess the dead roster spots thing, the way I think about it is like when I get to the playoffs, like I just like having the wide receiver who sucks and all of his efficiency metrics are garbage, but he's running 90% of the routes and out there. I'm actually like kind of excited about getting that guy in like the 17th or 18th round because he could do the Devante Parker thing. He could do the Matt Collins thing, right? So like, I guess I still care. I think I still care about dead roster spots. Like I don't you want as many live? I guess it is a little different because like you only care about 1 week and not consecutive.
The
weeks,
zeros don't matter, and like 8 points and 12 points don't matter at all. So it's just about the amount of weeks each roster spot can produce, 90th percentile outcomes for whatever they are.
Yeah,
that's fair. I would probably, Pete, I'm probably thinking roster construction wise, like a running back and a tight end here. Unless there's a wide receiver you really...
I'm still into Richie James on this team, but he would be the only wide receiver I'd really consider.
Yeah, for me, it would have to be a Chiefs wide receiver.
Yes. And this goes back to our conversation of like, without Kelsey, without Pacheco, I'm fine playing this through, a triple stack with the Chief. I kind of like James, I think, where I look at.
I'm open to that,
we only have Tony and Rice.
Yeah. And,
how would you guys take Mahomes and not take James, dude? It's a must.
We just did. And then I'm with you. If we have a tight end who we think has like legit upside, I'm down to do that. Otherwise, I'm fully on board with a running back pick.
Yeah, for me, it would be like Mayer, because the Chiefs will play the Raiders twice, so that's kind of interesting. I guess Noah Gray is kind of galaxy brain interesting in a way. Who are the running backs? Do we still have Jeff Wilson?
Jeff Wilson's still there. This would be a spot. I mean, I like Jeff Wilson, Pierre Strong are kind of like.
I think I would have taken Strong. I think all these contingent value guys are just so much better in this. Like, because 10 weeks of zeros from these guys matters not at all. If you get 2 weeks where Zamir White is the straight up starter or whoever.
I would lean toward. I don't know. What do you think?
Real man.
My three.
Real man takes Jody Fortson here.
We're not doing that. Who do you
want to talk
Sam?
about uniqueness?
Give me Mayer.
Okay.
I just think there's something to like one Mayer I think has some upside down the stretch, and two, like I already said this point, but like in Mahomes spike weeks, if Dallas Goedert just like has his duds, which he will throughout the year, like that really hurts us. Like I think we could still win this with like a 12 at tight end for Michael Mayer, right? And like giving ourselves that out, I think is valuable. Like,
well, and that's the thing. Basically, every team can tell themselves this, right? Because tight end is such a low scoring position. I was
gonna say
there are. I think Sam, you said it earlier, right? Like there's going to be a week where the highest scoring tight end is 16 points, and it's going to be like free for all week. Whoever is separating at the other positions gets to take it.
Yeah.
Whereas we will have, like, if Kyle Pitts drops like a 30 burger, like it's going to be Kyle Pitts week. It's going to be who built the best team around Kyle Pitts.
You know how when you finish a Best Ball Mania 3 draft and sometimes you're like, this team is just cannot win. Like it can't, this team is not winning $1 million. I think every single person who drafts a weekly winners is like, well, you never know, you just don't know. Like maybe that's the exact combination of players you need in week 8. Like it's after doing this once, it's an extremely, this is an addicting draft format for sure.
Yeah. And that's what, the other Zach says, having different opinions makes these shows so much more informative because the reality is none of us really won't know what's viable until 2-3 years of this journey.
For sure.
I mean, and Davis and I like completely think about this tournament differently, which is the goal of this tournament, right? Like the whole thing that's fun. And I always said, like with Best Ball Mania, with how the prizes are tilted in week 17, like you're kind of, if you're not building for that in mind, everyone should basically building similarly or relatively similarly. In this, someone can go be like, I'm going to try to win week 5. Like if that's your goal, you can build really good week 5 teams. And then if we have 10 people in the draft, all doing different things, that's why all of a sudden you see like a Michael Pittman faller, right? Because like everyone's doing their own thing, ignoring this guy. I think maybe seeing big ADP fallers that feel weird is maybe a testament to people all trying to accomplish different things in these drafts.
Yeah. My first reaction from that too is I feel like in Best Ball Mania, there's like a couple tiebreakers I have in mind, but there's like not that many of them, right?
There's like but none of them apply here.
Yeah, but none of them apply here. But here also, I feel like there's like a million on every pick. You could be like, are the bye weeks stacked up? Is it a divisional guy? Are they playing each other? There's like infinite infinite tiebreakers for these picks. Like it's a little overwhelming, but it's a really interesting format.
I mean, Pete, I 100% see what you're saying in this specific circumstance, like with the Mahomes, Allen Hurts, whatever round 2. And I would have to think more deeply about that. Like, so you have Mahomes and your opponent has T Higgins or Devonta Smith or whatever. So like, how much of a projection disadvantage are you at? But I do think building a team with multiple outs, I don't think it's waving the white flag. I don't think it's playing for min cashes. I do think it is just giving yourself, I think it's providing a wider surface area to 90th percentile outcomes, taking 2 quarterbacks with multiples of their teammates.
And I'm not even going to disagree on the 90th, but we need 99.9 percentile outcome in this contest. That's what I'm pushing. It's the same thing like when we talk about like running back and quarterback pairings, right? Where it's like,
Sure.
I think that's like pretty good for the regular season and probably even pretty good at ping-ponging you to the week 17 finals. But then as we saw, like with Pat's lineup, like Barkley didn't hit his lineup because Daniel Jones went off. Like in that really top end thing, those guys are going to be negatively correlated. And I just want every fucking bullet I can at a non-Mahomes position to try to build Mahomes super teams.
I think what's really interesting with that Barkley point is like, we have proof that you can win Best Ball Mania with your round 2 pick counting for nothing in week 17. Can you
didn't have a good week 16 either?
Yeah, the question is like, can you win one of these weekly tournaments with like your first round pick, your second round pick not counting? Like I think it's gonna be really interesting to see like the teams that win this. And I think the answer is yes, you can, but like
more likely to win this than Best Ball Mania, I think, right? Or do you disagree?
I was going to say less likely just because like Best Ball Mania, once you get to the finals, there's only 450 people or whatever. And like the ownership is so skewed. Like once you get there, like Mike Evans would have been on the optimal roster, but he was only on like 2 teams. So like he didn't actually matter. Whereas like in this tournament, every player is 8% owned, or every meaningful player is 8% owned. Right. So like you can't get away with like having a super suboptimal lineup because of that.
But like, let's say a second round pick gets injured, right? Let's say Saquon gets injured. How many, like, what would that decrease? So if you have 17 other active players and Saquon's injured, how much does that decrease your weekly equity?
I think you go in and rename that one. Yes, if you're losing your second round pick in this weekly winners format, you are. I don't want to say drawing dead because anything's impossible, but you are so much more dead in this than you are in Best Ball Mania losing a second round pick.
Yeah. I don't know. It's weird though, right? Because like
I'd have to think about that more before
everyone,
saying something definitive.
What is the average max of every pick in the second round on a weekly basis? Like on average, I'd say somebody in the second round is going to put up like a 25, a 30 burger, right?
Sure.
So like you need to find if your second round pick is dead, you got to find a way to make that up. And I don't think it's impossible. Like Pete, if you need Devante Parker in the 17th round, not to say him again, and he has his huge week, can't you like make up for that kind of? I guess like other teams, I don't know.
Maybe where you can win me back over is the uniqueness element, right?
That's what it is. Yeah.
But maybe this is another thing too. We talk about like when it gets closer to the end of Best Ball Mania season, like starting to really try to draft some late round picks that aren't drafted in like, more than 10% of drafts. I think we probably need to start pushing that even in this contest here of like,
you should be doing that every time.
Yeah. And starting to look at, and we can use maybe some of those like Badge Bro sheets too, for looking at percentages guys are drafted, but it's like having a unique guy that Mac Hollins or Davis, you took Josh Reynolds, like the guy who goes off, that's on 5%, like that is going to be, and that's how people take down the battle royales, right? It's that one-off piece that isn't drafted in those 6 rounds that is the differentiator.
That was my thought with Reynolds, was like Marvin Jones will get drafted 80% of the time on Goff teams, but Reynolds probably 20% of the time. And I think that has way more value in this format than it does in Best Ball Mania, because in Best Ball Mania, you just need guys who are not zeros, right? It doesn't really matter. I think you have much more freedom with your later round picks in this, because your median expectation of return from those picks is so much smaller, right? Because they don't need to contribute that often.
Yeah. It's like
I was just going to say one other point about all this too. It also has to do with, if you are going to get true sweat entertainment equity out of this, to Davis's point, like having your Dak double stack and your Mahomes double stack, you're going to get more sweat equity out of it. It's almost similar to like in DFS, if you lock button a stack, it's like my entire sweat is wrapped up in this single stack. And if it's done,
Right.
you do have more outs to sweating. I just think you're probably hurting your just uber percentile outcomes by doing it. But again, the whole point of this too is going to be fun to sweat. It is going to be really fun to pull up on a Monday or a Sunday evening and be like, do I have a team with a prayer to finish in the top 10 here? And if you have 150 bullets and you have, 2 stacks on each one of those, you have 300 different stacks you get to build around each week to sweat. Like that's legitimately fun. I think too, going back to the DFS thing, and again, these aren't always perfect comparisons, but like one thing I talked about.
We should push back on that because it's not the same thing as playing the spy on DraftKings or even the Millionaire Maker on DraftKings because of the replaceability.
There is more, I think it's more analogous to that, to playing DFS than it is to trying to win Best Ball Mania.
Yes, I agree.
But DFS point I was going to make, and then I was the one that said I was going to keep this a tight 90, and then the ADP gravitational. It's
just this show. You can't get out of here on
Everyone
time.
needs to get their points in.
I was just going to say, like, again, with the exposure thing and how you build portfolio, like a lot of times, like Brian says in his exposure sets, if he's running a 150 set and he has like 15% Mahomes and like 2% Dak and 2% Goff, he'll just axe the Goff
The
ones,
2%.
the Mahomes, because being like, for this slate to go, I'd rather have more combinations around the bigger stand I'm making than to be feathering in like the second option. Well, what if Dak goes off? Well, it's like, well, then the people who have way more Dak or have built more intentionally around Dak, I think are going to have better teams than you. That would be my point.
I think that's the illusion of control, though. I think that's the human brain wanting to believe that it has some control over the events. Like, to actually take a lesson from David Kitchen here, like you don't know if
did you just refute Rick 75's point with a David Kitchen aphorism? We've lost.
I did. No, but because it is the way, the order of operations that our brain has for these things is that Mahomes is always going to outscore Dak, right? That's the priority of this conversation, is that every single week Mahomes is going to be projected for more points than Dak. So taking Dak feels useless because we can't foresee an outcome where Dak has multiple weeks of scoring more points than Mahomes. But we know if we just look at the probability distribution, like that will happen and has happened in real NFL games that we've seen. I don't know. Maybe I'm questioning it now, but that's how I'm seeing it. And also the other thing is at quarterback is you don't need the nuts, right?
Yeah.
Even in 261,000 or whatever, you don't need the nuts at quarterback. The nuts at wide receiver is more important, which I guess is a point in your favor.
Yeah. I think the thing to remember too is like, I don't know, I think we over focus on like quote unquote wasting picks at quarterback and wasting picks at tight end, when in reality, like there's 8 starting spots. So once you're getting to round 9, that means you're like quote unquote betting against one of your round 1 through 8 picks to not be in your starting lineup, right? Like you're going to waste, once you've taken your 5th wide receiver, you're betting that one of the wide receivers you took in the first 4 rounds is not going to hit your starting. So like you always have like more picks than are actually going to hit your starting lineup. I kind of get why at quarterback we should be extra careful about that, but like let's not pretend that like we're not doing that at every position once we're in the double digit rounds.
That's a great point. I would not have thought of it that way.
Yeah.
Yep. I think my big like put it on a throw pillow, like live a little for this is just like the drafting like you're right ethos is
so
just even more pronounced in this one.
Yeah.
Again, this is why I'm so excited, because to really even dive into this more, because we barely even scratched the surface.
Yeah,
of the
we got like 2 minutes into. We got like 2% into this.
Yeah.
This tournament is sick. Like part of me like wishes we had a full summer of just like talking and thinking about this contest, because I do think, I don't know, I could even see it somehow surpassing Best Ball Mania as like the most interesting thing to discuss.
My idea was you make it you add an even gnarlier wrinkle to it, which is that you kind of do the reverse of what they did with Best Ball Mania, where most of the prize money is in the weekly winners, but you add $1 million or 500,000 to disperse and have it be a Best Ball Mania. Have it be a season-long tournament as well, where
layer that on top as well.
Yeah, because that is almost the perfect blend of needing to pick the right players, get the commute, like it just that seems
basically
like an amazing
if
contest.
you took I agree. So instead of having the regular season prizes as is, where it's like 500,000 or whatever, you distribute that over the first 14 weeks even or whatever.
Yeah.
And then weekly payouts for that, but then all of that. So you would have people optimizing for that while still gunning for the better EV top prize week 17.
That would be
sweet.
the true melding of the game formats. Yeah.
I love that idea.
Or just like
All
a
right.
higher stakes, lower entry version of this would also be sweet. Like if you could do like 1,000 person version of this.
They will do that. Yeah. Mark my words. That's going to be coming.
Yeah.
I don't know, but 100% that'll happen.
I would think that has to be coming.
Yeah.
Anyways, Pete, should we wrap this up?
Yeah, land the plane. You're the host, but I'm just the one gently nudging you to land it.
Okay, I forgot who was the host at this point. Let's see. I got nothing else going on this week. I'll be back next week for ADP chasing. I think we have. Oh yeah, I do want to note this. Next week, Matt Harmon of Reception Perception and Yahoo is going to be joining us on ADP chasing. That'll be really cool. Never talked to him. He obviously does really interesting wide receiver charting stuff that I think adds an extra element to some of the wide receiver analysis. So it'll be really cool to have him on the show and break down some of the mid-range and late round wide receiver targets. So wanted to note that big show next week. Davis, what do you have got going on this week?
I'm just getting back from vacation, so I don't know. I know I got a lot of work to do this week, but I haven't really started structuring what's happening in my work week. So
do you want to address
I'll tweet it.
Cam Akers can't be this year's Josh Jacobs gate?
It
should go viral.
I'll just always say the opposite of whatever Dave just said.
Yeah, there isn't actually much more to it.
So Dave could be like, Patrick Mahomes is the greatest quarterback of all time, and I'll be like, dude, he doesn't even have as many Super Bowls as Tom Brady. Like, it just doesn't matter.
Pete, what do you got going on?
I just streamed my 75th Best Ball Mania draft over on my channel, and Easy from the Deposit Kingdom hopped on and co-piloted with his very cool correlations spreadsheet. So check that out. No shows tomorrow. No ship chasing on Wednesday. Everybody is out. So this is your flagship ship chasing show this week. And then Wednesday, because Millionaire Maker Karain is out, I'm having Hilo from 1 week season fill his spot, and then Sean will be drafting with me in the second slot on Wednesday. So those are my main things.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Great.
Oh, and we are doing a Swolecast this week. So be there for that on Wednesday.
Drafting.
All right.
Drafting all summer long, baby.
All summer long. All right. I'll do it too, because to help plug Sam, make sure you guys are following Sam on Twitter. His link is down below. Sam's been doing an awesome job on ADP chasing. Appreciate all your work. You know, we do a lot of shows around here with like zero prep work. And so just having one person make some charts for a show just feels like it's, production through the roof. So thank you, Sam.
Appreciate that, Pete. It's been a lot of fun. And yeah, we'll be here for the rest of the summer. It's only July 3rd. We got another 8 or 9 ADP chases to go.
You've got roughly 68 days left to get all your teams drafted. I've started doing slow drafts because I'm not gonna get all the way there. So I've started doing slows.
Let us know.
Kids.
Let us know in the comments too, because opinions are all over the board on this week. Maybe something like, give us like the top 2 things you guys are prioritizing in this contest in the comments, as far as like the structure, the divisional stuff, player archetypes, all that different stuff. I'm curious where everyone falls, because it does really seem like everyone's all over the map on this. All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to power this down. Thank you for hanging out with us on the 3rd. Thank you to Sam, to Davis, to the chat. Thank you to Underdog for giving us a fun new contest to chew on. Hope you guys all have a wonderful 4th of July. We will see you guys back next week on this channel. Next show will be ADP Chasing with Matt Harmon a week from today. We'll see you guys then.